Welcome to the Medical, Recreational, and Illicit Cannabis Comparison Module. The different forms of cannabis available to patients can create significant confusion for both patients and practitioners. The learning objective of this module is to understand the difference between medical, recreational, and illicit cannabis in terms of quality, consistency, safety, adulterants, accessibility, and legality. Let's begin with some basic terminology. Medical cannabis refers to cannabis which has been grown or obtained from a licensed dispensary for a qualifying medical purpose in a state with a legal medical cannabis program. Medical cannabis is typically used for symptomatic relief, and intoxication is not the end goal of use. Recreational cannabis, also known as adult use cannabis, is cannabis which has been grown or obtained from a licensed dispensary for use as a recreational drug in a state with a legal adult use program. Illicit cannabis is cannabis which is grown or obtained through unlicensed or unregulated sources for either medical or recreational use. For the purposes of this presentation, it is assumed that legal, medical, and recreational cannabis programs follow industry standard regulatory requirements and testing. But it is important to understand that this is determined by individual state regulations and is not always the case. So it is very important to have a good understanding of the cannabis product testing and regulatory requirements within your state. It should also be noted that over-the-counter hemp CBD products are not covered in this presentation. A discussion of safety and testing for hemp CBD products can be found in our Hemp CBD Learning module. Medical cannabis products are typically of a very high quality and are available in multiple ratios of cannabinoids, including CBD-rich varieties. They are typically free from harmful levels of contaminants and are grown under a strict regulatory process to protect patient safety. Recreational cannabis typically focuses on the strength or percentage of THC, and usual recreational offerings are not as varied as within a medical program when it comes to cannabinoid ratio. Recreational cannabis is also usually free from harmful levels of contaminants and is grown under a regulatory process within a legal adult use program. Illicit cannabis is of unknown quality. Again, the primary focus is on the strength or percentage of THC, so a wide variety of cannabinoid varietals are not always available. Adulterants and contaminants are likely because there is no oversight on the growth process within the illicit market. They may use pesticides or have rodents present, as these grows typically occur in hidden areas to avoid detection. The consistency of dose is incredibly important to a medical cannabis program. Most medical cannabis dispensaries will maintain a consistent inventory to ensure that patients have available medication when they need it. The dispensary can also provide accurate information as to the dose, cultivar, cannabinoid ratio, etc. found within the products they carry. Within a recreational program, consistency of dose is less important. Cultivar and dosage form variety remain the most important factors. Inventory in recreational programs tends to vary, with availability largely determined by plant growth cycle, as inventory frequently sells out. Recreational dispensary staff can also provide accurate information on each product as to dose, cultivar, cannabinoid ratio, and other pertinent information. There is no consistency of dose or dosage form on the illicit market, as you are relying solely on word of mouth as to what you are actually receiving, and there is no guarantee the cannabis will be available when and where it is needed. Typically, medical cannabis programs have the strictest testing requirements. As immunocompromised or ill patients are using this cannabis, it must be contaminant free in order not to compromise patient safety. Recreational programs now have testing requirements which are being instituted in many states where none were previously required, as the presence of pesticides and other contaminants still poses a risk to those that use these products. Obviously, illicit market cannabis does not have any testing requirements, and any results given are potentially unreliable or falsified. Illicit markets are also frequently contaminated with other illicit drugs or potentially harmful substances, as the e-cigarette and vaping associated lung injury outbreak, which occurred in the third quarter of 2019, clearly indicated. When it comes to adulterants, again, medical cannabis programs typically have the strictest regulations and require testing to ensure products are free from mold, fungus, pesticides, and heavy metals. Most states also require testing to ensure the strength and potency is accurate and consistent in medical cannabis products. Individual state regulations vary when it comes to adding excipients to medical cannabis, with some not allowing any, and some more lenient when it comes to the addition of flavoring agents, thinning agents, or other external excipients to medical cannabis products. Most recreational cannabis programs also require testing to ensure products are free from pesticides and heavy metals. Strength and potency testing tends to be less stringent in recreational use programs, and there is very little regulation in terms of what dosage forms, additives, or excipients are allowed. There are no regulations or testing requirements for illicit market cannabis, which creates a risk for the possibility that illicit market cannabis could be laced with other illicit substances such as fentanyl or cocaine. Illicit market products may also contain synthetic cannabinoids or terpenes, which could be harmful when used. Accessibility remains the largest hurdle when it comes to medical and recreational programs. Medical cannabis programs are limited to patients that have been certified by a practitioner according to individual state law. Often, access is limited to specific disease states and qualifying conditions, and state residency is also required to purchase medical cannabis products. Typically, cannabis within medical programs is also the most expensive due to stricter regulatory processes and costs associated within state program implementation and testing requirements. For example, 5 states require a pharmacist on site in medical cannabis dispensaries, which significantly adds to the overhead of dispensary operations, and that cost is then passed to medical cannabis patients. Access to recreational cannabis programs is limited to states with legal recreational or adult use licensing. State residency is typically not required. Tourists can purchase legally from adult use dispensaries when visiting a state with a recreational program. The cost of recreational cannabis is typically equivalent to the illicit market, although it may be higher in states with stricter testing and regulatory requirements. Illicit market cannabis remains the most accessible form of cannabis, as it is widely available through illicit dealers, and recent decriminalization laws make it less of a risk for people to purchase cannabis illegally. Obviously, no residency requirements exist, as all illicit cannabis dealings are illegal. Typically, illicit market cannabis is also the most affordable, with the important caveat that there is no regulatory process in place to know exactly what is being purchased or what contaminants or adulterants may be present in the product. As of the fourth quarter of 2019, 33 states in the United States have a legal medical cannabis program, and 10 states have a legal recreational cannabis program. Because cannabis is still federally illegal, neither medical or recreational cannabis products can be taken across state lines. This can pose a problem for patients, as some states will honor an out-of-state medical cannabis card, but most do not. So, patients who use medical cannabis for treatment cannot bring it with them while traveling, which poses a significant health risk. People who visit recreational programs in states outside of their state of residency can typically purchase products with no problem, but it is illegal for them to travel back home with the products they purchase in a legal recreational state. Obviously, illicit market cannabis is illegal and no regulated pathway exists for its purchase or consumption. Many states have decriminalization laws in place, but penalties vary widely based upon location. Further information on this topic can be found in the Legal Implications module of this certification program. In summary, there is a significant difference between medical, recreational, and illicit cannabis. Understanding these differences will help you communicate more effectively with patients to guide them to a safer alternative to illicit market cannabis. This also serves as a general guideline as to what to look for in terms of regulatory practices to ensure patient safety within legal, medical, and recreational cannabis programs. This concludes the medical, recreational, and illicit cannabis comparison module. Thank you for joining us.